Hi, my name is Dan Clausen from dumbidols.com, and I'm going to discuss today the spiritual dynamics behind idolatry, particularly in the idea of the perversion of worship and the roots of idolatry and what it really is, where it comes from within us. Now, many things can be defined by their comparison to other things. For example, light is its own thing. It has substance. It is waves and particles. It has speed. It has its own qualities, attributes, things about it that make it its own thing. It exists. However, darkness does not really exist. It isn't defined apart from light. Darkness is the absence of light. But darkness doesn't have a speed. It doesn't have a weight. It doesn't have it's not a particle. It's just the absence of light. Now, similarly, we have life and death, where life is its own thing. Life is its cells, its activity, its energy, it's all kinds of things. However, death is just defined as the absence of life, and death cannot be defined apart from life, because life is what defines death. Now, the same thing can be found with sin and the natural order of things. If we understand that all of creation was created good, this is what is true and what is right. However, many other things can be defined simply in their perversion of that. For example, food is created to be good. It's created to give us nourishment. It's created to build us up and make us strong. However, when somebody takes food and they take way too much food, and there's a perversion of what was originally created good. When somebody takes so much food, they become weighed down. It becomes a detriment to their body as they continue to pervert that which was originally good. Now, another example is in rest. Rest is a thing that is created good. Rest is ordained in the Sabbath. That man should work for the first 6 days of the week, and on the seventh he would rest, just as God did. However, if we rest every day, if we are sleeping every day and we're not doing anything, this is a problem, and this is laziness. This is sloth. This is contrary to anything that anybody would consider good. It's a perversion of what was good, which is rest. Now, and lastly, a good example, I think, is that of sex. And sex is something that was created good. It was created perfect to help us multiply, to reproduce, obviously, but also to be the pinnacle of the human physical love. It's created good. However, there's a tremendous perversion of that in so many different ways, in terms of lust, in terms of promiscuity, and many other sexual perversions that are just a twisting of the original thing that was created good and for its good purposes. So, when we take those examples and then we look at something like worship, which is created good, worshiping the creator of all things, the true God, the idea of worship, which is really a key to a meaningful life, was then twisted and perverted into idolatry, where man, being perverted in his own heart by sin, he, just like sex, he creates a spiritual lust and begins to look for any number of things to worship, because he's blind and he doesn't know where to look. Now, so here you have idolatry as the culmination of the inclination of man to sin with the inclination of man to worship. And those two pieces together create idolatry. Because every man and every woman has an inclination to worship something. Whether they call it a god or not, they give their time, they give their talents, and their energy and their drive to seek after something and they give it meaning, and they adore that which has no real quality that deserves adoration. People will seek after weak and pitiful gods, or they will seek after trees and rocks and worship the created thing rather than the creator. They will worship spirits. They will, in modern times, we think we're much more sophisticated than these things, so we will go and we will worship money. We'll worship intellect. We'll worship our own minds and our own sense of wisdom, and exalt ourselves above things. But this is just a more sophisticated form of the same perversion of worship. Now, all that to say, we do have that inclination within us, and that inclination, as modern science tells us, is deep inside of us. Modern science tells us through genetics that we have a God gene, so to speak, which inclines us to seek after something to worship. It inclines us to seek after the true God. And because our hearts are perverted, we seek after everything but God. Some of us arrive at the right one. Most of us go every which way and seek after money or politicians or celebrities or our individuality, or we'll try unique and obscure religious experiences from across the world, just seeking to fill that God-shaped hole inside of us. So we have that inclination inside of us. Modern science calls it the God gene. And if there is such a God, if there is a God, if there is a creator of all things, and genetics is really kind of the code that he chose to ingrain things within us, that would be the mark of him, I truly believe, because the mark of a creator, if there is a good creator that expected us to worship him and to seek after him, he would give us that inclination within us. And I believe that is exactly what the God gene is. It is the mark of his expectation. So, with all that in mind, we also have to understand that there's an enemy who is Satan, who seeks to deceive and to give us a reason to stray. He creates other things for us to go after and to seek after, and to sets up all kinds of glittering things that would follow after to worship. And most of them appeal to our own sense of how we think things should be, or doctrines that make us feel good, or religious experiences that make us feel good. And as most people should understand, that truth does not necessarily have to play to how you think things ought to be. Truth is independent of itself, and we have to acclimate ourselves to truth. We don't take truth and press it into our own mold. So we do have an enemy, and he has a campaign of propaganda. The world is full of noise and full of voices, and each one of those draws us after a new thing. Now, there is a true God, and there is a true worship, and it's my goal through dumbIdols.com to help us to arrive at the spiritual understanding and the spiritual dynamics behind idolatry and false gods. And I'm going to speak to it not just from the sense of a blackboard theology, but from in the sense of these are the things that we assert and the things that we believe. But I'm going to speak to it from Scripture enlightened by personal experience, because I myself was a cult leader, and I set up false gods, and then I saw the demonic sponsorship and the spiritual forces come behind it and endorse it to give it credibility, and it spiraled out of control, out of my own hands. And that is the goal of dumbIdols.com, to really show the spiritual dynamics behind these things through Scripture, through logic, through science, and through personal experience. So thank you. Please visit dumbIdols.com.